Hi everyone. For this tutorial, I want to talk a little bit about the left hand frame on violin. So it's really important to have a nice hand frame when playing violin so that you can play comfortably, play in tune, be consistent. You prevent injury by having a nice hand frame, and you're just efficient in general. So um, in general, what you want is to have your wrist straight, so we don't want to see this or this, which in beginning classes we'll see this a lot when students are getting used to holding their violin. They'll try to hold the instrument up like this. So if you want to talk about a hand frame like this, you're going to have a really hard time playing in tune. And the same thing goes if your hand is your wrist is pointing towards the scroll. You're also going to have a harder time reaching for notes. So the goal is to have a neutral wrist, and we want our fingers to be nice and curved, and we want our thumb to be relaxed. You can check if your thumb is relaxed by tapping. So if you feel like you're squeezing on, you're working too hard. So the first thing that I would like to talk about with hand frame, or the first exercise, is just a simple scale. So we're going to do G major, and the focus is going to be making sure that our thumb is not pressing on the finger on the neck, and that our wrist is not going this way or this way, that it stays nice and neutral, and that there's minimal movement with our fingers, and that we're working as efficiently as possible. So I'm going to try to play a G major scale with all of that in mind. And that's pretty relaxed. You can work with students by having them do long tones, or a slow scale, starting with putting on a metronome around 60 and then having them do whole notes and then focusing exclusively on their left hand. So it's going to be like. And then going back down. And then you can switch it to half notes. So. You can switch to quarter notes, eighth notes, 16th notes. But the whole time you want to be focusing on keeping your hand as relaxed as possible. One of the things that people tend to do when they're not using their fingers is that they'll lift them way over here. That's not necessary. You can keep your fingers near the fingerboard in order to work less. And then the next exercise is actually similar to this. When you're bringing your fingers down, you want to think about them coming from the base of your knuckles. So you might do this. I wanted to incorporate this motion into a scale. So the second exercise is going to kind of think about the motion coming from there. And let's try that with G major. So. Okay. So it's like a plop. Now you can now do some sort of acceleration. So when you're playing faster passages, it's not the same thing. Like you sometimes start to panic and start moving your hands in funny ways. So in order to keep a hand frame that is healthy in faster passages. You can incorporate faster rhythms into your scale routine, and then think about having lighter motion with your left hand, and make sure you're not doing anything crazy. So you can turn on the metronome. So I'll do the same thing with this. So the metronome is at 60 here. I'll start with quarter notes. 1, 2, 3, 4. So in the faster ones, the 16th notes, you want to make sure that you really have a small motion and that you're not working hard. Another thing to note when thinking about your hand frame is that depending on which string you're on, your elbow is going to be at a slightly different place. So if you have your left fingers on the E string, your elbow might be a little bit more to the back. But then if you bring it to the G and you bring your arm around, and remember that your thumb is still relaxed, you're still not pressing, you're not holding on firmly to the instrument, you can just do this motion. This is another exercise that helps when thinking about hand frame for students on different strings. You can also think about your hand frame in different positions. So the thumb being relaxed in shifting and in playing in different positions is also really important. So when you're shifting, your thumb is going to come around. So you can do this little exercise here to think about your hand frame in different positions, because when students are more advanced and they start doing 2 or 3 octave scales, they start to need to play up here. So it's important to know what a healthy hand frame looks like up here, right? So if I leave my thumb way back here and then just shift and I just try to reach this way, I might not be able to play as accurately. I might injure myself, right? So if I think about the thumb coming around of the shift, that's part of the whole hand frame. So there are some etudes that are useful when thinking about hand frame, and one of the patterns that I'm going to use right now is from Le Shrediak. So that's just going to be like this. So that's the simple pattern, and with that you can do a lot. Already I feel that my thumb is starting to press a little bit because I added a couple of different elements. The first one is using the 4th finger. That introduces a lot of tension into students playing. So you want to make sure that you have a nice round pinky and that you are not pressing super hard and not tensing up and not reaching like crazy, just as relaxed as possible. Take this slowly. And then once you feel comfortable with that, you can start switching bowings and rhythms and tempo. So while I was doing 4 per bow, and I'm going to do 8 per bow. And I can take it faster. can take it even faster than that, but as soon as you start increasing the tempo, you need to make sure that you're really relaxed. So if you start feeling tension at this point, you might want to remove your hand from your violin, shake it off, and then reset your hand frame. Make sure your thumb is not pressing, and do the same thing. You can use dotted rhythms. And then so those are things that you can do to that exercise. There are a lot more variations in that etude, but that is just something that I wanted to introduce. So I quickly want to recap the importance of having a solid left hand frame. Injury prevention is number one. If you have a bad technique, if you're doing something really strange with your left hand, you can injure yourself, and that is no fun at any stage in your learning journey. The second one is technical accuracy. So if you're in a position that is healthy, that is not tense, you can just move with more ease and you're more accurate more often. The third thing is efficiency. If you're in a position that requires you to work less, there's just minimal effort in getting things done. So let's say if I brought my fingers way up here and was playing like this, I would have a much harder time playing the etude that I just showed. So the parts of the body to think about in your hand frame are your wrist, your elbow, depending on which strings you are on, your thumb is really important here, and then your fingers. Think about the motion coming from your knuckles, like this. You can do different motions on the violin to feel the hand frame in different places, feel the hand frame in different places on different strings. That's useful. And then the goal is to have a neutral wrist, right? So we don't want this, we don't want this. We have a relaxed thumb, and that our fingers are curved, and that when we are playing things that and not using other fingers, that they don't come off too high, so that it's more efficient. So no squeezing the instrument, and no working too hard. That's the general idea. Yeah, so those are a couple of exercises that we can use for hand frame. Yeah. Oh, I should probably repeat the exercises. The first one was a simple scale, long tones. So when you're introducing something, you want to make sure that the exercise itself is not too overwhelming. In order for you to make your point on the instrument, you want to minimize the challenge on the exercises side. So a simple scale, just focusing on your left hand. What's going on? You can turn around to look. You can play in front of a mirror or in front of a smartphone device camera, and just watch that. You can also overdo the wrong motion. So say I'm demonstrating like this, it might be helpful to play in this way or in this way to feel how my body would be impacted and how the efficiency would be impacted, and then correct. And then check in every so often and be like, okay, is my thumb squeezing on the neck? Is my wrist coming this way onto the neck as well? Is my wrist extending outwards towards the scroll? Those are all things that we can do to check on our hand frame, and it is a process like everything else. So good luck.